Let's speak now to Executive Board Member for the IFCC, Bishop Mosa Sono, who's also the presiding Bishop of Grace Bible Church. Bishop, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me, Bongiwe.
Before we get into your statement and the briefing that you had yesterday, let's start with, some devastating visuals that we're seeing coming out of KwaZulu-Natal. I wonder what is your, the IFCC's response to that?
Well, we obviously are in contact with the authorities with regards to what's happening there. Even at our local church level, we're doing the same. I made a phone call to some of the officials today. As you realize, there's on a fact-finding mission to sort of find out where help can be offered. We certainly are going to be getting involved with that. And we really pray for the families down there, that God will really strengthen them and comfort them. And we pray for all the leadership. And, we see our leaders in government doing their best to help. And I think even civil society in general. As South Africans, we are known to rally together in times like these and to give the help that is necessary. But we're certainly going to be involved as IFCC at that level.
All right. Thank you so much for indulging me there. I'll now get to the reason why you and I are speaking. You mentioned yesterday in the briefing that while you're welcoming the 50% capacity that has been put in place as part of the transitional regulations, there are still some reservations. Talk to us about that.
Yes. Well, I think it's important for the public to know the journey we have traveled with regards to the proposed regulations. They were not just read now, they were presented to us. First of all, and I've written some dates down. On the 13th of December, Minister Mondli Kungubele did meet us as assigned by the President to test as to whether if they passed these rules or made these rules, presented them, would we be in favor of them. We were very vocal about how we feel they are discriminatory and many other hurdles that we raised with them. And then on the 8th of March, we had a meeting with the Deputy President, Didi Mabuza, and he came on behalf of the NCC, the National Command Council. They still presented the same proposal. And we were very unanimous as religious leaders as to why we are opposed to what they are proposing. And then on the 22nd, the announcement was made by our President to say this is what is proposed and so on. 31st of March, we sent our Secretary General to Cape Town to meet with the Deputy of Health, Minister Dr. Lomo, and he expressed the same thing. And then we get an announcement again on the 4th of April. And I think that background is important for the public to know. Behind the scenes, we have been talking. And our reservations were on many levels. The first being that having to say who should come to church, who shouldn't, based on a certificate, is very discriminatory in essence. We know how the religious community is divided on the issue. We know as well how stigmatization is a problem. We also know how access to vaccination, particularly in some of the other areas, if you know, there's a study that was made to show how access seems to be much better for vaccination in your well-resourced communities as opposed to places like Soweto. Even worse when you go to the rural areas. There are people who couldn't access this. Also, remember, we've been very involved at the forefront. I mean, when the President had a meeting with us way back in 2020 in March and expressed to us that there's this COVID coming, can the churches stop with services, can we suspend what we're going to do? The religious community was fully in support. We also supported the vaccination drive. Some of us got vaccinated, put it on Facebook. A venue like ours in Pimville, Grace Bible Church, was used as a vaccination site and all of that. I'm saying all that to say the people who are saying they are not in agreement are not people who are anti the vaccination. Even now we are involved in that. But we think that there's a lot of that needs to be considered in terms of making sure that people have access And once we start discriminating, it becomes a problem. How do we tell people not to come to church if they're not vaccinated?
So in light of all that you've explained, I've allowed you to explain so that I can then, because I was going to ask you if this indicates that you are against vaccinations, but you've already explained that. But then let's talk about how this all then is perceived by the IFCC. Do you feel like government is hearing you, or are they simply forging ahead despite some of the reservations that you've already experienced?
If we come into a meeting and you call it a consultation, and people go to town in terms of making their presentation, and also they are unanimous about that. Remember, Bongiwe, the taxi industry did have a consultation with government, and they are able to have 100% of people in taxis. And I mean, even from a scientific standpoint, if you look at some of the buildings that house 2,000 people, more than double volume, they're like warehouses as large as this. Just from a scientific standpoint, the likelihood of someone catching something in a building that is double volume like that, that's well ventilated, and the one in a taxi, you can't compare the two. Now, how did government say yes to taxis? Why are they not demanding that in gymnasiums, in restaurants? There's been many events that we've seen on television, people protesting, wherein some of them were not even wearing masks. There were more than 2,000. Why wasn't government taking a step? So it's becoming a problem for us. We don't know where to place it. It doesn't look like we are being heard. It doesn't look like the consultations are actually that in essence. We're really trying to understand what's going on here.
So what does this then mean? I mean, we are days away from the Easter celebrations. They're big in the churches. So what does this then do for the Easter celebrations coming up this weekend?
Remember, it's 2 years that the Passover has not been celebrated. One of the biggest events on the Christian calendar. That we didn't do that as the church community means we understood. We're not in the same space we were 25 months ago. The scientists themselves are differing on the issue. Some of them are saying, why are we still having all this? So what we are saying in essence is, we are encouraging people to come to church. Please, they've got to wear masks. We will have that distancing between the chairs, the space that is allowed. However, we're not going to discriminate by asking for vaccination passports or anything like that. And people are hurt. People need pastoral ministry. People have lost loved ones. Young people are discouraged. And, during Good Friday, many people want to go to church. And we encourage people to go to church in their numbers. We won't violate any other rules in any way. But the vaccination certificate, we cannot keep to it at all.
All right, unfortunately, we're out of time, but let's leave it there. And thank you so much for coming in, Bishop. That was IFCC Executive Board Member, Bishop Mosa Sono. He's also the presiding bishop of Grace Bible Church.